Okay, so we're in week 5 and we're starting with a new data set. Now, I'll have to say this data set, out of everything that you've worked with so far, may be the most challenging. And the reason for that is that we have several different data sets that we'll need to combine, clean up, and make the data usable. So let's just get started here. If you go into week 5's managerial report, here you have the instructions. You also have the file folder, which has both churches, the Alpha Church and the Omega Church. You've used everything else in this folder now. We are just going to use the Omega Church at this point. So to get this information downloaded, you can simply come over here and click download. It'll download all of the data sets. I have those down here already. So we'll take a look at all of our data sets. Okay, so as far as the directions go, this is the example of the managerial report. Same thing that you've done in previous weeks. What we're going to do is assume you have a manager. You can assume it's a client if you want to, but assume you have a manager that has asked you to take a look at the data for the Omega Church and put together a report. So at this point, similar to what you had with the common data sets, you can select the different variables that you want. You can come up with your own research question and hypotheses. It's basically as if I'm your manager and I'm giving you all the data to say, hey, we have all this information. We really don't know what we're doing with it. So take it, see what you can do with it. Can you make sense of this? And then how can you improve Omega Church, or how can you demonstrate that maybe there's an area of opportunity for the church? So the same basic template that you've had before. I usually wait and do the executive summary last because that's a short summary of what this entire paper is about. The research problem statement, once you get into the data, you can write this problem statement. Perhaps we're going to look at attendance or tithing. We really don't know yet because we haven't opened the data. So let's go ahead and shift gears and get into the data. And you'll see we have data from 2014 to 2019, and then you have this Church A data set. So let's open the Church A data set real quick. And it's pretty intense when you first open it, right? And this is why we're having these videos, so that you can take a look at this and try to understand what we're doing. Now, again, this is real data from a real church. I've gone through and hidden or changed names so that you won't be able to figure out which church this is. But basically, this is a real church and it's real data that came from a real church. So somebody, in fact, one of my students in a different class, received this data and gave me a call and said, help, I don't know what to do with this. So it gives you a good sense of when you are acquiring data, just what you can get. And you saw from the Alpha Church, sometimes it's a little bit of data. In this case, it's a whole lot of data. So the first thing to see is that we've got this broken down by year, a profit and loss statement by year, which is helpful. However, the way it's organized isn't helpful. If we want to take this information and break it down, we would need to essentially copy and paste this to a new spreadsheet, try to sync up the columns so that things match, and get some consistency. So we'd have a scientific method with this process. Now, it does give you a good chance to just take a peek at what they have year over year. They've done a nice job, and this is how the church keeps their own records. So they've done a nice job in showing these are their expenses year over year. It's a pretty large church, you can tell by the expenses, and sometimes they have a profit, sometimes they have a loss. So here we go, and then yeah, so we're ending at 2019 here. And they have different tabs or worksheets in this book. So you can see, for example, here is the profit and loss statement for 2019. That should match the profit and loss statement here for 2019. So again, it's just what you get handed. Sometimes you have multiple people doing the books, and so they organize it in different ways. They may call things differently. So for example, here you see the Bible Bowl team experience. Maybe they're calling it the same thing year over year. Looks like they are, Bible Bowl team experience. Sometimes though, they might put a period, or they might change the name. They might put a different word in there, which would skew your numbers if we're trying to look at things consistently. So you do have to eyeball this a bit. Okay, so enough about this. Let's go ahead and pop over to this one. Get this open. So what's good about this is, let's get it in here. It's in one document, and it's giving you just 2014. Now you'll notice right away, the year isn't right. So, or the month rather isn't right. I'm assuming that's January 2014 through December of 2014. You'll see it down here that it is January through December. This is a profit and loss statement. This is also a profit and loss statement. So it's just going to take some time to understand what all these things are. Now, at the end, what you can probably do is clean this up. My guess is, let's take a look at it this way. If we just clean this up, we don't want the totals because that would skew our numbers. You're going to have your own totals. And we're just going to clean this up a bit. Oh, not like that. So this does take some time to do, but it's worth your time once you get it all put together. So remember, you want to take out any totals because you're going to put your own totals in there. And let's go on down. All right. Okay, so I went through and removed the extra lines, removed everything that was the total, removed the extraneous rows that we didn't need. I also sorted it alphabetically so I could just breeze through and make sure that I had everything looking appropriate. You'll notice there's one row with this where the dollar amount doesn't look right, and we should fix that. Let's see here. We'll find it. There it is. So that's not right. We should take that out. Sometimes you'll get this error. It just wants to know, is this really a number or not? And it is. So then you can save that. The other thing to do is, now that we have it fairly cleaned up, now again, this is just 2014, is you could add a column for year and put 2014 and then put that all the way down. Now you could do the other ones too. So what I mean by that is go on into 2015, do the exact same thing here. And then what we'll end up with is all the data in one spreadsheet that's a usable spreadsheet. So I'll pause the video, go ahead and get that done, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've basically done the same thing here with the 2015 data, just cleaned it up. We want to add the years to it. And now what we can do is take this, copy it, move it over here to our new spreadsheet where we are adding all the data to it. And you'll start to see, okay, now we have all the 2014 data, all the 2015 data. We want to do that for each of the data sets. So we're going to do 2016 now, and so on. Okay, so now I have everything in here, all in 3 separate columns. I've added titles to the columns. That'll be helpful. And you can see I have it by each year. So if we go to filter, you can see all the years 14 through 19. You could also see all the different topics that are in here or transactions that are in here. and the different amounts. So at this point now, you can start to peruse and see what topics are of interest to you. As a few ideas, let's just do it this way. You can drag this out. Maybe you want to take a look at these different walks that they've had to see, have they done this walk every year? If they have, we can then see they did it 16, 17, and 18, so they did it 3 years, and we can see the amount of money that was transferred within those 3 separate years. So one way to do this would be to actually do a pivot table. So let's clear our filter, go in and do insert pivot table. Okay. Now we can look at the transaction, which in this case, let's take a look at those, that walk. Let's see, let's get this where we want it. Oh, up here. So anything that has to do with walk, and we could even search for the word walk in case they've named it something else. Now what we want to do is look at the amount that's involved with the walk, and that's a count. So we want to actually change that setting to sum. Okay, so here you can see the total amounts, and let's format that so you can see what it's talking about for the walk. Now you'll notice the issue here is that they've called it 2 separate things. What we want to do then is take a look at the year. We don't want a sum of the year. Let's do it like this. Okay, so to fix this, you can either rename these, or what we can do is total it by year. So in this case, we see 2016 had 19,000, 2017 had 24,000, 2018 had 14,000. So if I wanted to take that and put it into, let's say, a chart, we could do that. So I'm going to actually take this off and come back up here to transaction. There we go. And then what we can do is copy this. It's a little bit easier if we just copy it to a new sheet, and then we'll remove these extra lines. There's not that many, so it's pretty easy. We'll just remove those extra lines. Now you have something that could easily be a bar chart. Go into recommended charts. In there, you can see 2016, 2017, and 2018. This would be for our walks. Okay, and since we're not familiar with the organization, we'd have to get back into the original spreadsheets to see, was that income? I assume that's income. Or was it money going out? Maybe they were paying for people to walk, but it's probably money coming in where people paid a fee to walk to the church. So we can see for each year, 2017 was their best year, almost right over $24,000. 2018, it fell down. So we don't know the details behind this, but maybe the issue was they had different people leading these activities each year. So whoever led it in 2017, perhaps we want to call them back and say, hey, would you like to run the walk campaign for this year? That's an idea. Now, what we could do is continue to look at, let's get back into our data here, continue to look at some of the other things in here, because there's so much. They have a radio program. We could take a look at their radio program to see if it's been beneficial over the years. So same concept, we could use this as a pivot table, and then take a look at the charts to see, has this radio campaign, which 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, yep. So every year they've had this radio campaign. How much have they had for expenses and for income? Because they do have it broken down by both expenses and income by both. Another interesting ministry that they have, let's take a look, is, here we go. So they have some just various names, Abraham's Seed. They have the Bible Bowl. They have Bricks for Jesus. You'll notice it's a little bit different because there's spacing issues or something here. They have, or actually, so what you'd want to do is kind of clean that up as you do your analysis. They also have a prison ministry. They have a lot of different ministries that they're doing. So you could do a complete analysis on everything that we think is a ministry, and then see how much is that ministry costing the church versus if there's any income coming into the church. We don't know as far as souls saved, what that means for the church, but we can take a look at the financials that way. So at this point, it's just a matter of you taking a look at all of the different transactions to see which ones are interesting to you. You could also take a look at maybe the pastor's expenses to see retirement expenses, travel expenses, salary, all of these different expenses, which we wouldn't typically have a bird's eye view like we do, but we've been blessed with this data. It's just a matter of getting into it to see what is the information in here that we want to play around with so that you can put together a nice managerial report. If you want to focus on women's ministries, youth ministries, you have a ton of data here to do that. Once you get your spreadsheet, like I said, in this case, we have it year by year. So 2014 all the way down to 2019, you'll see there's over 10,000 rows of data. Plenty of information for you to play with, to get creative with, and to figure out what you want to do for your managerial report. So now that you know what you can do, maybe your research problem statement is perhaps addressing the radio ministry or the women's ministry or youth ministry. So you can get creative there. Remember, with your research question or questions, depending on how far you want to take this, you always need to think about it in terms of variables. So are we looking at one variable, two variables, three variables, however you want to do that, but think about the actual names on the data set. So if we're talking about radio ministry, call it radio ministry. If you're talking about the puppet ministry, call it the puppet ministry. Be very scientific with it in that regards. Talk about your data sets as far as, are you going to use all years, or are you only going to use maybe 1 or 2 years to compare information to? And then your findings. This gives you a chance then to put your chart, talk about what you have found. You can have as many in here as you want. And recommendations. Typically, a recommendation with this is that they need to do a better job organizing the data, calling them consistent names, and making sure that the data is entered properly. So just a data management recommendation. You may have other recommendations though. Perhaps you see that the radio ministry is not being a good investment for the church. And we can't tell again from souls saved, but from a financial perspective, can we tell that it's costing the church too much money? And maybe the recommendation is to do something different. Another option that comes up often with this is the tithing. Let's go back to the top real quick. Tithing, because they have several different ways to pay their tithe. They have these easy tithe expenses, the PayPal expenses. You can see that they have quite a bit of fees coming out with these different options. So it's a nice option for the church, for the congregation, to have various options to pay. But how much is it costing the church to give them all these different options? So that's another thing to look at. There may just be a better way for the church members to pay their tithe instead of one that costs the church extra money. All right, once you get it all finished, kind of wrap it up in a nice conclusion. And that should be it. If you have any questions, please let me know.